Here we are again, angry, frustrated, and wondering what is going on in our country. And I'm angry today. I'm angry at so much of the ignorance that has spewed from the mouth of the one who is supposed to lead us. I'm angry that a mini civil war broke out in our country, which was not a protest. This was insurrection. This was tyranny. This was a mob. These were people who have been brainwashed and hypnotized by leaders who do not care for them at all. They only care about their own power. I'm angry at racism, at white solidarity that gives white people the benefit of the doubt more often than not. I'm angry at the cowardice of politicians who have allowed this man to divide us in such a wretched and evil way. How could it come to this? A president telling people to use force on his political enemies. This, my friends, is sickness that must be urgently taken care of so that we can protect ourselves and our nation. We cannot and must not let broken and sociopathic individuals into positions of authority. And it's hard because it seems that they gravitate toward those positions. But we are charged now to create newer, updated systems, more safeguards, better laws and policies that protect our people from this internal sickness. And I also need to go on the record. Some of you have posted this on Facebook, but I too must say that when I talk about white solidarity, I'm pretty much talking about the encounter with the Capitol Hill police and this particular mob made up of mostly white folks. And how if that had been people of color or other minoritized groups, specifically brown people, then we would have probably seen even more bloodshed. And that, if that is not an example of why we need to continue to do the work on anti-racism in our church, then I don't know what will show someone that doesn't believe that. But I know most of you understand that and want to do that hard work, and so I applaud you. I applaud Black Lives Matter sign. I applaud the 8th principle. But know that there is a double standard in this nation. I'm happy to say that there is some resolution after 5 people have died, including a Capitol Hill police officer. Suspects have been arrested. Some folks have been fired from their jobs, and they should have been, for being a part of this mob. Good citizens are speaking up and reporting who they know or what they saw. We will heal from this. But make no mistake about it, racism is real. Now, this violent action last week absolutely was about race and the changing demographics, the social landscape in this country. It wasn't just about one man's need for power. That's what it was for him. But he used that, his need for power, and inflamed people's inner fears that stem mostly from them believing they've been left behind. People unwilling to change when their iceberg has melted. People who have been ignored or even forgotten by the system. But that's not an excuse. It is never an excuse for violence. unless one were protecting themselves. This wasn't about a false narrative of a stolen election. This was about individuals who cannot think for themselves, people who do not know where to put their discomfort, their dis-ease. And this group has been used, this mob has been used historically by powerful people to do their bidding. So this, what we saw, is not new, especially not to people of color, especially not to Black folks, African Americans. Not new. But what is new is that both parties were involved. Both parties' lives were at risks. And finally, perhaps they've been pushed to say enough is enough. And it's a shame that it takes a threat over for blue and red when both are affected. It takes a threat for us to come together. That happened very similarly when there was a carjacking issues. People were getting carjacked. I can't remember when it was happening, but it ended up happening to a congressman or a senator, one of their family members, and all of a sudden, boom, there's this sort of anti-carjacking bill that passes. We got to be smarter than this as human beings. And when we use the tool of propaganda and we fall prey to that tool, we are being enslaved. Enslaved to old narratives, enslaved to stories that have been proven false about who gets to tell the story or be in charge. And really, it's the leaders who are responsible for taking care of those who are more susceptible to manipulation. The poor and uneducated. And not in all cases, because there's some people who have resources that are also being manipulated. But the question is, it's not a political sermon, but how do we change this? That's what I've been sitting with over the past several days as I'm putting this message together, figuring out what do I want to say? We've been through so much as a congregation. What do I say now? And the message came. We begin by honoring truth. We begin by understanding words, spoken or written, or if you can't speak, sign language. We begin to understand words, phrases, and clauses and the power and impact they have. The words we use matter. Words, they vibrate and ripple. Words carry emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. Emotion. Words. Words are energy. And energy can be positive or negative. But it starts with a thought. And thoughts become things. Thought can become a reaction. Thought can become a spoken word. Thought can manifest in a thing or things being created. Thought can create, preserve, or even annihilate. For those who can't speak, their sign language, as I said, is their spoken word. But also, even if you can't speak, your gestures, your reactions, that is energy in motion. That is emotion. Be careful of the words you say. Keep them soft and sweet, for you never know from day to day which ones you'll have to eat. I learned that in college. Those old aphorisms carry so much wisdom. So I want to talk today about words from a religious, metaphysical perspective. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. That is from the Old Testament in the book of John. And the Gospel of John, which is not a part of the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, is a different kind of book. It was heavily influenced by the Greco-Roman philosophy and mysticism of its time. So you have to know that to understand what the writers were trying to say, the esoteric message. And the writers were describing God as the Word. This was from their understanding of creation, how the cosmos came into being. That in the beginning, source, energy, God existed as void, containing all possibilities. And then there was a vibration, a sound, and energy was put in motion, and boom, the cosmos exploded, and eventually matter solidified into planets and suns and moons. The vibration, this sound, the Hindus say it was a sound of Om, O-M, Om, Om. Sound is a vibration. Vibration is sound, and it ripples outward. We know the power of sound and vibration. You can play a beat or a tone at a high enough frequency. It can break glass. You can play the sound softly, and it can soothe. You can mix sounds together and make harmony. This is the word that the writer is describing in the book of John. By your vibration, by your sound and frequency, you create like God creates. And that's the point. When you speak, you create like Spirit creates. And by your words, you can give life and love or death and hate. Now, some, whether they know this ancient wisdom or not, don't realize that they are becoming magicians with their words. I want to put up a word for you. You see that word? Spelling. If you take the ing away, you have the word spell. There it is. The ancients were telling us that you put a spell on people, for better or worse, by the words that you use. Oh, my friends, this is the sorcerer's stone. This is how you turn lead into gold. This is the secret teaching of all ages I'm giving to you right now. Your magic is not in a wand or a ritual or in a sleight of hand technique. Rather, your power to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly is in the words you use. Now, words also can be gestures, can be your tone, but it's how you vibrate as a human being. And people kind of know when they want to be around somebody that's vibrating love or whether somebody is vibrating a lot of negative energy. And so we can cast spells that bring joy and hope and comfort and love, and the opposite is true. We can speak truth to power with our words and form community and connection. By our words, we can raise consciousness or awareness, open minds and hearts to our collective story, or we can be stuck in his story. You can speak words that embrace or words that erase. A friend of mine who grew up in New York used to say to me in college, "Word is bond. Word is bond." It was said as an afterthought, and sometimes out of context, but I think about it now, and he's right. Your word is your bond. And a bond is an adhesive. It sticks to something. By the words we use, we're sticking stuff on people all the time. And that's why I really love the little book, The Four Agreements, a Toltec wisdom book by Don Miguel Ruiz with Janet Mills. I'm sure some of you have read it. And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. Your word is your bond. I'd like for you to listen to an excerpt from the book, read by Rev Anastasia.
Being impeccable with your word is not using the word against yourself. Being impeccable with your word is the correct use of your energy. It means to use your energy in the direction of truth and love for yourself. If you make an agreement with yourself to be impeccable with your word, just with that intention, the truth will manifest through you and clean all the emotional poison that exists within you. But making this agreement is difficult because we have learned to do precisely the opposite. We have learned to lie as a habit of our communication with others, and more importantly, with ourselves. We are not impeccable with the word. The only thing that can break a toxic spell is to make a new agreement based on truth. Truth is the most important part of being impeccable with your word.
So our work is cleaning out our emotional poison. Our work is trying our best not to speak negative words that cause harm to others. Our work breaking those toxic spells that tell us we aren't worthy or good enough, which is why hurt people, and we project our pain on others. That's what the leader of this nation has been doing for 4 years, projecting his own inner pain. And it's sad. But this is all about how impeccable you are with your words. And yes, we fall short. I fall short. We will make mistakes with our words, say things we didn't mean to, and we have to apologize. Then we begin again in love. And there's some work to do, of course. You can't always just say, I'm sorry, begin again in love. There is some work, there's some reconciliation that must take place as well. But that's why we come to a church like this, a community like this. And I want to say that when we're talking about words, it doesn't mean you don't get angry. Anger is oftentimes a measure of how much we love something. And we can use that righteous anger to speak words of truth. But we also have to be mindful that that anger can very quickly turn toxic if we become self-righteous and all-knowing. Humility is required. Without that humility, your energy and motion has been converted to something else, something negative, something more like a weapon. So words teach us caution in what we say and how we say it. Mindfulness is necessary on a spiritual path. And as the reading said, we own our words. We don't blame other people for our words and our actions. That's what the people at the Capitol did. That's what they've done probably their whole lives. Blame other people, blame other groups for their problems. That is what Dr. King called one tyranny giving way to another form of tyranny. And it never ends, tit for tat. This is a word distortion, taking positive energy and then turning it negative and trying to convince others that it's positive. Now that is a magic trick. The outcome always tells you what the words are. If they come from light and love, or if they come from hate and evil. If they vibrate love and mutuality, you'll see that in the end. You'll see it on that person's face. You'll see it in their gestures. You'll see it, and you know it intuitively. And the opposite is true. Our goal as human beings is to learn how to play a harmonious chord as one people. You could also say it's like jazz. There's all these different parts, all this beautiful music happening all around, but it's still a part of the entire song. This is beloved community. There's individuality. Everybody has their different parts they play. But the individual is not greater than the whole. Rev Anastasia and I met for probably 10 hours this week, one-on-one, to get congruent on our understanding of beloved community. And it's important for us because it represents what kind of congregation we wish to be or are and wish to become. And it's also, I believe, a shared vision we have for this country. In the coming weeks, we will say more about our understanding of beloved community. But considering our theme this month of daring greatly, I want to close by sharing with you what I see as our vision of beloved community, what we see, Reverend Anastasia and I. For us, beloved community inside this church and outside our doors exists as a place or places of mutuality, nonviolence, honesty, trust, authenticity, equity, liberation, accountability, reconciliation, service, boldness, compassion, and love. All those words just vibrate so harmoniously. And so as we dare to be great in our individual and collective lives, let us remember today that this is not a utopian fantasy, but this is possible. We can do it. We are doing it. These words that I mentioned, they want to create beautiful poetry. They're calling us to create poetry. These words, these sounds are asking for harmony. But to get there, as Brene Brown says, vulnerability will be necessary and needed. And Reverend AZ is going to talk about that in a few more weeks, about being vulnerable. Being vulnerable is about being courageous. As a human being, being vulnerable means admitting that sometimes you're afraid. Being vulnerable means using your words, phrases, and clauses. Your words that are honest and true. Friends, please bring your whole self to this congregation. And I hope and I expect your vulnerability will be met with reassurance, comfort, a good ear to listen to, and a great big hug when we can do that again. I love each and every one of you, and I miss seeing you in person. I hope these words I've shared reach a frequency and a vibration that will touch your soul and remind you that you do have a community that loves you. Indeed, that is the magic spell that I wish to put on you for all the days of your life. May it be so. Amen.